Well, hey everyone, welcome to another episode in our Life Lifter series. And we've been working through different verses that have inspired or been related to some famous hymns that have been written over the generations. And today I want to share a passage from the book of Psalms, in chapter 56, verses 9 through 11. Now, David had written this psalm, and this whole psalm was that we trust that God cares for us in the midst of fear. That God cares for us in the midst of fear, and when the darkness seems to set in, there is a light in there. And David was writing of this. Now, it was believed that this chapter was written during what was recorded in 1 Samuel 21, when David is fleeing from Saul and he's in the Philistine territory. And this one part of the verse is beautifully written, and it relates to another hymn that I think is so beautifully written as well. It says, "Then my enemies will turn back when I call for help, and by this I will know that God is for me. For in God, whose word I praise, in the Lord, whose word I praise, in God I trust, I will not be afraid. What can man do to me? What can man do to me? In God I trust, I will not be afraid. What can man do to me?" So many times in our lives, we are faced with something that is terrifying, whether it's illness, whether it's just uncertainty of the future. During so many different seasons in life, we will experience that, and we will find ourselves being afraid. But we can trust in the fact that God is with us, that God cares for us in the midst of that fear, and that there's a hope through it. Listen to verse 11. "In God I trust, I will not be afraid." In God I trust, I will not be afraid. What can man do to me? What can man do to me? And that's what I want us to really think about, and what I really want us to walk away with today. We trust in God. We have no reason to be afraid. Why? Because we know that He cares for us. We know that He's going to walk with us. We know that He's going to fight for us. I want you to believe that verse today. Believe the end of verse 11. What can man do to me? There is no reason to fear. But now listen, there are times in our lives where we will be afraid. There are times in our lives when we don't want to trust again. There are times in our lives where we will be hurt, and it's so hard to do that, but we can always turn back and trust in God because He cares for us. I want to read this verse one more time, and I want you to just really take this in. "My enemies will turn back when I call for help, and by this I will know that God is for me. In God, whose word I praise, in the Lord, whose word I praise, in God I trust, I will not be afraid. What can man do to me?" He was being pursued at this point by his enemy. David was being pursued, but he knew that God was going to be there with him. He knew that he could trust in God. He says, "It is in God I trust, not in man, not in a job, not in money, anything like that. It is God I trust. I will not be afraid. What can man do to me?" There was a woman in 1850 named Louisa Stead, and she was from England. She had come to Christ at a young age, and she became a missionary and wanted to travel and share the gospel all around the world in different fashions. And she wasn't really able to. She immigrated to America and got married, and between 1879 and 1880, her husband had drowned off the coast of Long Island. There's different ideas and speculations of what had happened. But she also had a 4-year-old daughter, Lily. And after her husband had drowned, she decided to go back into the missionary field and move to South Africa to minister to the people there. And that's when she wrote this hymn, "'Tis So Sweet to Trust in Jesus." She had just gone through this terrible tragedy of losing her husband, moved to another country to minister to other people, but felt so compelled to write this song, "'Tis So Sweet to Trust in Jesus." And she returned to the United States and heard a speaker at a missionary conference and was so enthused by the whole thing. and she moved to Rhodesia in 1901. She retired in 1911 and then passed away in 1917, but her daughter Lily ended up marrying another missionary, D.A. Carson. D.A. Carson was just a prolific theologian and missionary and evangelist, and wrote this hymn that I want to share with you now.
And 'tis so sweet to trust in Jesus, just to take him at his word, just to rest upon his promise, just to know thus saith the Lord. And Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I've proved him o'er and o'er. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more.